And we're approaching the last portions of this Kriya Yoga Meditation Beginner's Guide. And we need to explore some things together. We've already spoken of meditation. We've spoken of ways to deal with past pain, how to determine the best approach to activate your will while also maintaining a state of surrender. We've talked about romantic relationships, spiritual relationships. We've gone through a number of things within this particular course. But now we need to bring it more fully into our daily experience. We need to take our practice, our daily exercise of meditation, and find a way to bring it into every moment. And so what we're going to discuss today is the idea of how to have or realize that you have direct communion and a direct relationship with the wholeness of life. You have it all the time. One of the troubles a lot of spiritual seekers seem to get themselves into occurs because there is this thought that the more spiritual they become, the less involved they will be with mundane things, the less involved they will be with everyday things. And really it's quite the opposite. The deeper our realizations are, the clearer we become, the less likely we are to try to escape from what's going on around us. And then we develop a greater capacity to see everything around us as an aspect of ourself. And so when we are talking with our neighbor, when we are checking out at the grocery store, when we're going for a walk in nature, the neighbor, the grocery store clerk, the trees, the rocks, they're all seen as an aspect of our own consciousness. We no longer think of, I'm in here, trapped in this body, and all this other stuff is out there. And this is a bit of a hard obstacle to get over, to really embrace and see and accept that everything really truly is a reflection of our deepest self. And that's because we are so locked in our head that we feel like we are a point of awareness looking out into everything. And that's just habit. When really, we are that point of awareness, sure, and that light shines through that point of awareness. But we are also the so-called objects that light strikes, reflecting back to us. So our self is not just this point of awareness. Our self is everything as well, because if you think about it, you can't have an object unless there is the seer. You can't appreciate something unless you have a sense of individuality. So the object cannot exist unless there is someone there to perceive it. And so that tells us that there is an intimate relationship between the object and the seer. They are mutually dependent upon each other. So much so that they are actually one whole thing. So what we need to consider is this idea that we are not simply communing with a higher power when we sit down quietly in meditation. Every experience we have is a communion with ourself, a communion with the wholeness of life. This is oftentimes why people say that your inner states of consciousness often reflect how you experience the world around you. If you are angry, if you are dissatisfied, if you feel cheated, you're going to see cheaters, you're going to see threats, you're going to see problems all around you. If you are content, if you are clear and stable internally, you're more likely to see the harmony in the world. Even if something goes wrong in the sense of an aggressive behavior or something difficult occurs, you're more likely not to push that away and compartmentalize it into a problem that's out there. You're more likely to say, well, that's part of the bigger picture, and I will deal with it accordingly. But it's not about projecting a problem outside of oneself. It's about seeing that maybe the difficulty, the insoluble problem, is just part of a bigger picture. And even if you can't understand the reason why those things are occurring, because of your own practice, your own inner contentment and clarity, then you develop faith. And faith isn't just blindly accepting everything that you see. Faith is a state, a sense of appreciating harmony and order even when you have difficulty seeing it, realizing that there might be more going on than your temporary little mind can know as you incarnate through this body and this being. So as a beginning Kriya Yoga practitioner, of course, you need to master the basics. Sit down and meditate. Do your intensive daily training. But then as you progress through your work, you start accepting, trying to realize, to have it revealed to you, how everything is a reflection of yourself. And this may be something that you have to contemplate on your own. So again, you can go back to the previous video, I believe it was the one before this, on how to contemplate with spiritual texts. Well, you can also contemplate with questions, such as when you see difficulty or adversity in the world, rather than getting pulled into it and becoming reactionary to it, at the moment, stopping, doing some gentle breathing and asking, how is this really a reflection of myself? It doesn't mean you get the aha moment immediately, but you need to be open to asking the question. And then maybe if it sits with you, then at night before you go to sleep and you meditate, do your meditation practice and then spend 5 to 10 minutes just thinking about the issue and asking yourself, how is this truly a reflection of myself? And what you might find is that over time, this understanding, this realization dawns slowly but brightly within you. So you move from a reactionary individual who feels that you are trapped in a body, traveling through an alien, hostile world, to realizing that that inner light that shines out onto all the objects, reflected back to you, is simply reflecting back a temporal state of yourself. And that's a hard pill to swallow, because it does require a lot of personal responsibility, and it's very easy to not want to accept that responsibility. It's human nature. And if you look at the history of wars, the history of human greed, the history of the desire for human power, you know it's deeply ingrained in us to have this us versus them mentality, and that either us or them will win. It's the very rare individual who's able to function within the world, to do one's best to play their part, even if they don't understand everything. They're able to remain at peace within themselves, knowing that there is a much bigger play, or a much bigger drama, or a much bigger program, a much bigger set of circumstances going on that travel back through endless time, and to remain at peace with that. And these are the individuals that find clarity, that find the peace that passeth all understanding. Not to get all biblical on you, but we live in a difficult world at times. And why those difficulties arise, we don't always know. But it's our goal to learn to see and accept all aspects of our own consciousness, all aspects of the wholeness of life. Because again, I may have mentioned in a previous video, or maybe it was in an astrology talk, that you create separation when grief comes upon you, when sadness comes upon you, when anger comes upon you, and you say, no, that's not me, that's not divine, that's not holy. You say, when I'm sitting quietly and no one's bugging me, and everything's working beautifully, now that's holy. So what have you done there? You've created division within consciousness. And we know that the process of yoga is unification of our consciousness. And that in order for this worldly manifestation to occur, as we've reviewed in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, and those of you who don't know, for some reason, I'm not sure why it doesn't come out, but the book Kriya Yoga, Continuing the Lineage of Enlightenment, there is a commentary on the Yoga Sutras in that book. I put it in the description, but people keep writing to me saying, do you recommend a commentary on the Yoga Sutras? And I have to chuckle, because the first book I ever put out had a commentary on the Yoga Sutras in it, which was Kriya Yoga Continuing the Lineage of Enlightenment. So those of you who don't know, that book has a commentary on the Yoga Sutras. But anyway, it discusses how the gunas, or the three primary cosmic powers of darkness, of energy, and of light, that all these are required. When they go out of balance, then we have this world appearance. When they come into equal balance, the world appearance disappears. So we need darkness, we need energy, we need light in order to make this whole experience occur. So the darkness, the energy, the light, they're not separate from this holistic consciousness. They're intimately a part of it. And they're the reason, the movement of these things are the reason why we have these experiences. So the biggest challenge that a lot of spiritual individuals have is remaining steady on their course and learning to accept those things that they would otherwise think are problematic as aspects of their own divine consciousness. We want to be loving towards people that disagree with us. Doesn't mean we have to engage in their behaviors, but a sense of compassion, a sense of love if possible. We also need to be loving and compassionate with ourselves when we cannot be compassionate towards other people, because we don't always know how the drama is supposed to play out. And anyway, back to the point. What we're trying to consider here is that if in your daily life you can start thinking not about, oh no, now I have to go out into the world, but maybe ask yourself, well, what is my experience in the world? What is it saying about my state of consciousness? How can I love and appreciate and then work with these aspects of myself, these facets of myself in an intelligent fashion? How can I change my thought process from the little me is going out into this alien, hostile environment to I'm ready to see the beauty in the world as well. I'm ready to see the darkness with the light. And again, to navigate that as intelligently with wisdom as possible. So it doesn't mean that you keep putting yourself in extremely painful situations just because you think you have a lesson to learn. Sometimes that lesson is simply that you need to learn that you don't have to put yourself in those kinds of situations. It's personal responsibility, one of the highest, if not the only lesson I think that there actually is. So you learn to navigate that. If the world is giving you messages and you're communing with it, that maybe you need to change your direction, well, listen to it. If the world is just simply saying this is a difficult time period and you'll make it through out to the other end, well, listen to it. That's a part of yourself too. And it might have a particular wisdom or particular knowledge that your little mind, your little personality doesn't actually fully understand. But then again, through meditation, through prayer, you can ask, you can contemplate, do I continue staying the course? And if the response is yes, then you do so. If the response is no, you need to make a change, well, then you need to start considering, how can I make that change? And then realizing that the wholeness of yourself will work with you in a fashion to redirect that change. But again, it's all you, essentially. So if you can start believing that at first, sometimes you have to first force yourself to believe it. But once you start to have the direct experience of it, you don't have to believe it anymore. And that's one of the main differences between a person that might be considered awake and a seeker or a believer. The seeker or the believer is trying to force themselves, hoping that something is true. The person who is awake just has direct knowledge and experience if that's the case, that is so. And you can have that direct knowledge and you can have that direct experience, but it takes time. And you do have to make mistakes. So you listen, you pray, you take action, and you find out that that wasn't the right action. And so you pull back, you do it again until you get the right situation set up where you're able to readily interpret, to commune with the intelligence that's all around you, until it becomes more natural, until then you don't even really have to ask the question. You can just stay tuned into your heart, and then most of the time it will seem as though you are guided to the proper direction, because you're going beyond the mind and relating to this infinite intelligence that permeates everything. And that occurs by meditating well every day as best as possible. But when you're not meditating, not trying to separate your meditation from the rest of the day, but seeing the meditation as a condensed training period. And then the rest of the day is being aware of yourself, not only your internal states, but also the images, the messages, the thoughts, the experiences around you. And then one final thing to be very clear about is that most of the time when people are looking for spirituality or spiritual experiences, really what they're looking for is entertainment. So they feel that if they're not being entertained at every moment by something that they consider to be spiritual, that it's not spiritual. I was recently listening to a talk by Alan Watts, one of the things I enjoy doing on my lunch break. And he was talking about how religions go, that they become more complex and more complicated. And you start with someone with a very basic message, and next thing you know, you've got people painting halos over their head and saying that they're avatars. And really the message is extremely basic. And that he gave an example of a relative of his, an uncle who was extremely sick, and he couldn't eat. He had to go on a very extreme kind of diet. And then when he got a taste of water, he was so enamored. He's like, I do not remember the last time I tasted water so well. And water is the purest, most life-giving thing. And in spirituality, it's that same way. We get so caught up in all these culinary delights, with these images of gods and goddesses, with these stories of meeting fantastic people and exploring your body of light, and oh, this person met the immortal Babaji, whatever it might be. We get so wrapped up in those things, and then we forget the simplicity of it all. And so we want to try to remember that simplicity as well as an aspect of communion, that when you're going about your day and nothing's happening, that is beautiful. Just be with the nothing. Explore that. Sit with that. Don't try to make it into something it's not. Don't create a story around it. Just learn to be in that state where nothing important is happening. And again, as I've said repeatedly, then you are really loving this divine consciousness as it is, without contrivances, without pretension, without expecting it to be something else. And so the real judge, I would say, if we're going to judge, and I don't really recommend that, but we're just going to pretend for now. The real judge of a person's spiritual character is not how many lights they see, how many immortal masters they've been with, how many halos they have above their head. It's really about how they relate to life when seemingly nothing is happening. And that is the deepest kind of communion. So as you go about your day, don't force it. Don't force nothing to happen. But try to be conscious when nothing is happening. Again, when you're standing in line, when you're sitting outside eating your lunch, when you just happen to be sitting on your couch, try to avoid the drive, the desire, the compulsion to pick up your phone and see who texted you, or what's going on Facebook, or let's watch another YouTube video. When nothing is happening, see if you can sit and be with whatever is there. And it may be that you find that you are uncomfortable, that you are anxious, that sadness comes up. And that's, of course, why you go and seek out all these other forms of stimulation. But if you can sit with whatever is there and be with it and honor it as an aspect of yourself, become friends with it, in time, the beauty of that silence, the beauty of that nothingness will be like an old friend, and you'll never seek anything else. You'll not really be driven so much to go entertain yourself all the time. To the outside observer, you will look boring, especially if they're not interested in these sorts of things. But it doesn't matter what the outside observer thinks. You yourself will know something timeless. And that is a profound state of communion with this wholeness of life.